Hello and welcome to this new special episode of the Moment podcast. I'm here today with Lynn to the next of me and below Raine. And within this episode, we're going to talk about Wind-Horse and Lord of the Rings. And so maybe you can take it away with, what is Wind-Horse? Because, for most of the people here listening, well, they probably wouldn't really know, what Wind-Horse is. And, so Wind-Horse comes from Tibetan Buddhism and, kind of like Tibetan shamanism as well. And there's also, within Mongolia, this concept of Wind-Horse. They're called the Kimori, and it's kind of symbolizes, if we take some Jungian psychology into it, kind of like the archetype of the self, where the different aspects of the self come together into one, where, Wind-Horse is also associated with the vessel that transcends but also connects the spiritual and the worldly together into one. And it's kind of like a symbol of liberation, transformation, and very much about transforming the darker aspects of the of the psyche into positive ones. So, negative to positive tendencies. And within this episode, we're going to go deeper into how, this symbolism of Wind-Horse and, the linked vitality to it is represented within Lord of the Rings. Because, Wind-Horse goes way back to the Proto-Indo-European mythology as well, into the Neolithic, and linked to soul flight and those kind of concepts. There is underlying mythological Proto-Indo-European base for that concept that is also within the mythology that Tolkien tapped from. So a lot of these figures that he tapped from the Indo-European mythology are also connected to the Wind-Horse symbolism as well. And, we're going to go into that scene by scene and then, go deeper into that. Yes, Raine, I think you want to say something.
And I'd just add that the idea of kind of the Wind-Horse does seem to carry on in other traditions, more modern terminology that I've kind of seen for it used is the subtle body or the subtle energies. And as far as, raising up the bad to the good, it's not about ignoring it, but, raising it up or maybe transmuting it if you want to get alchemical with the terminology.
Yeah. Very much so. And I think...
in my practicing it, I'd say it kind of helps cultivate a mental fortitude to deal with sort of your trauma and issues from the past, and also to build up strength for all your future challenges and adventures. And qigong and breath work that we do around the fox den seem to be the two sort of routine exercises to do that with.
Yeah.
And it seems to get the life force to flow more, and so then the stagnant things kind of rise to the surface for us to look at, and then to be cleared and transmuted, like you said, Raine. And that's my understanding of the Wind-Horse transformative energy.
Yeah, very, very much so. And in that sense, I think it also Wind-Horse is also connected to the soul, and for the shamans it's connected to soul loss as well, that that one is losing one's Wind-Horse, and it's like about like these rituals that they do to bring the Wind-Horse back. And yeah, Qigong and breathwork would be two particular ways of doing that. And I also want to welcome Egg on board of the fellowship here, because we're talking about Lord of the Rings, so why not? Yeah. But going now a little bit deeper into the Lord of the Rings. I don't know, like if any of you have anything to add regarding that already before we dive later deeper into these different scenes regarding Lord of the Rings and Wind-Horse. What comes to mind for you before I go on a whole rant myself?
I'd say rant away, and I'll interject when I feel up to it.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. No, but kind of regarding Wind-Horse, I just want to start off just with how I was looking into Wind-Horse, and I was seeing Lord of the Rings, and then I very much was just like, wait, this is I'm starting to pick up this Wind-Horse symbolism in Lord of the Rings in these different scenes, and how kind of Gandalf and Shadowfax and these different figures kind of deeply connect to that. And I was just okay, this is interesting enough to further explore, and hence this particular talk, especially Gandalf is a good example of that I want to go into later as well in some of the scenes, and Arwen and other such figures. And what I do want to point out regarding the Lord of the Rings is to keep in mind also is the deeper mythological layer that Tolkien is tapping from, where a lot of this symbolism is coming from, which ties into the Proto-Indo-European myths that we'll also be going into a little bit as well, and the Indo-European myths as well, that Tolkien got his inspiration from. And with that said, if anyone has anything to say, then please add to this. Otherwise, maybe we can go into the scene with Arwen.
I guess I'd just say that watching the series again, especially that second one with what is it, Gondor, the horse riding culture.
Yeah,
definitely seems like he got a lot of direct inspiration from researching them, and then obviously the Celtics with the elves and stuff.
Yeah, that scene regarding that, that he had a bit of a love-hate relationship with some of it, but that he very much tapped into the Welsh tradition as well, and very much
he was very Catholic from what I understand.
Yeah.
So a lot of the older pagan stuff kind of fascinated while simultaneously rubbing him the wrong way in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So regarding the scene regarding Arwen.
If you want him, come and claim him. Nino Hithaiglia Lasta Bethar, Rimonin Bruin and Danin Hulaya.
Just a bit ago, we watched a scene in regarding to Arwen and Frodo, and that she, brings him back to, I think it is Rivendell for healing, and there's some striking Wind-Horse symbolism right away into it, and there's also a deeper connection to Celtic mythology as well that we can go into a little bit deeper. First of all, I don't know, for me what stands out regarding the scene, especially for me, is the later half where she summons the water horses, and when she faces off against the ring wraiths, and this like symbolism of the water and also linked to vitality. For me specifically, the wind horse also being linked to vitality and bringing back the flow very much, where the ring wraiths could be seen as these negative kind of tendencies, like it's linked to the ring as well, even though like they stabbed him as well, Frodo, and he was turning into a ring wraith at that time. And
it's even called the Shadow World. Aragorn warns that, or Aragorn or Arwen, I forget, warns that he's being pulled into the Shadow Realm after being stabbed with one of their blades. And will turn into a wraith. And then Aragorn gets Sam to kind of scrounge around for some herbs, some local remedies. But he says they will need to get elvish medicine as quickly as possible for him to survive, and then Arwen shows up there.
Yeah.
So I haven't read it, so I don't really know what the significance of that river is. I don't know if did she get trapped there, or did she lead them there on purpose? But either way, once she's there, she kind of realizes that, she has an ace up her sleeve with that, I guess, elf magic.
Yeah.
And the riders even kind of stand on the edge of the water, almost like they don't even want to get in it at first. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then before they all mount up in one final charge, when she says, if you want him, come and claim him.
I believe that the area was like then the elvish realm, or like the territory in a way. So then she had more power there to ask the waters for help.
So between her horse, and the waters, either like the border to Rivendell or something, she found her source of power in the flow. And even it being, the shadow world that Frodo is being pulled into, you see Arwen stops right there. Instead of running from the shadows that she's being chased by, she faces the mob head on and, opens up the floodgates.
Yeah. And I don't know, with that, it makes me kind of also think about like Raine, what I think in the past that you talked about regarding the the Proto-Indo-European myth regarding the waters, but also the blocking of the waters and the serpent and that kind of linkage between the waters and vitality and this sense of flow.
Yeah, the basic core of the myth, like the serpent slaying myth, is you have the transcendent hero in the Proto-Indo-European template, the reconstructed template they have. They have the twins of usually conscious or unconscious. I think that's the Jungian stance on it. But generally you can see it as kind of thesis and antithesis. And the transcendent hero, Trito, the third, comes through to sort of unite the opposites and save the day. And he conquers the serpent. The serpent is usually born of the primordial waters. And the serpent is then withholding the waters that the hero conquers with the aid of the lightning bolt, or wielding the lightning bolt, or being granted the lightning bolt to kind of quell the serpent that then relinquishes the waters and returns the flow.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like there's some of that element there as well, even though like the Nazgul there are not riding, they're well, it's not really a dragon, it's more like this serpentine, like worm being that they're flying. But still, I feel with the Nazgul, there's still this like element there of kind of what kind of also the serpent represents in that sense. Is the negative, like shadowy tendencies, psychologically speaking.
Yeah, there's the obvious connection to the shadow realm that Tolkien makes himself, because he uses that terminology outright. And yeah, even though they're not on those flying dragon worm things, in Jungian the shadow is, there's the individual shadow as well as the collective shadow. And you could kind of see that with the ring wraiths, because they were the 9 kings of men that were corrupted by the ring. So they turned into the ring wraiths. And there is kind of a sense of the collective human history of the shadow, the collective shadow in that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it is kind of this, I see it in psychedelic art a lot, where you have the serpents intertwining to create the DNA helix, basically. And obviously in like with Hermes and Asclepius and all that, you have the rod, which is the intertwining serpents that is related to healing or wisdom.
With Asclepius, it's like the one wand and one snake that you have to look at the snake. You have to bring the awareness, the lightning bolt there to then overcome the stagnancy of the beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course in The Hobbit, which I read as a kid, they do, like, instead of the serpent holding the waters, there's Smaug, and he's holding the gold for himself at the mountain at the end of that book.
Yeah. Wasn't it also like that you said with the serpent slaying myth that it like transformed later into like the dragon hoarding the gold?
Yes, in like people were examining it through the course of history, and in folk tales it kind of turned into the serpent hoarding gold. And then like if the waters, you think of the waters like in man's history, that would be, and the serpent was related to drought. So to conquer the serpent is to bring back the rains and have water again. And so instead of, relying on the land's wealth so much anymore, now we have money, and that turned into currency, right? And so then you have the dragon hoarding gold. And of course, dragons don't even need gold. What's a dragon going to do with that? And so, in kind of a Jungian lens, it is almost like this kind of improper relationship to like between ego and primal instinct that we have. And then we kind of have the pendulum swinging with the New Age, where they kind of demonize the ego and say we don't need it, and like it will bring on the age of Aquarius to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously you need the ego. It is a part of who we are and what the psychological tools we were given to navigate this life. So it's really more about our relationship to the ego. And also with kind of the etymology of all those old serpents. Again, like in Vedic, it was the one where it was related to drought. Indra conquering Virtra or something like that. But it's also, as well as drought, it is also obstacle in Vedic. In Hebrew, it is the accuser and the adversary, like Satan, linked to the serpent and the devil. In Orphic, it was necessity, was linked to that serpent in that tradition. And then in Egyptian, which isn't even really Proto-Indo-European, which is interesting, you have it as the serpent of chaos, Apep, which again is also born of the primordial waters. And in or Native American, they have all these serpents and stuff too, but you get the sense that it is much more like less demonized and much more connected to sort of wisdom and healing. Instead of having so many, say, kind of shadowy elements that you see in more Proto-Indo-European.
There's like I guess the side of the like the snake can mean also fertility and instinct, right? So it's really the unintegrated instinct that becomes the beast that is harmful. But if we integrate it into our full being, then like working together with all our aspects, like with the mind and coming together in the heart and being embodied, bringing the spiritual down to earth, then in that case, then the snake becomes a part of us in a way that we can have it work with us instead of against us.
Yeah, and there's the quote we like to throw around in the Fox. It's two quotes, actually. Jung uses them, but I believe it's Aniela Jaffe, who I don't know, but I just looked up the quote to try and attribute it, because I thought it was Jung, but it wasn't. But so man is the only creature with the power to control instinct by his own will, but he is also able to suppress, distort, and wound it. And an animal, or the serpent in this case, to speak metaphorically, is never so wild and dangerous as when it is wounded. And primitive man must tame the animal in himself and make it his helpful companion, but civilized man must heal the animal in himself and make it his friend. And I also heard Damien Eccles kind of touch on this too when he says something like, we went from conquering lions depicted on all those Sumerian tablets and statues to now we are Daniel and the lion's den, where he's not conquering these lions with force. He is, sort of sitting amongst them calmly and patiently to not be torn apart by them, basically.
Yeah, I don't know, like that with the waters and the fertility, and especially with fertility also, what you brought up, Lynn, that makes me also kind of, like then think regarding, Arwen also in a deeper sense, like with Rhiannon, because, the Celtic goddess, because she's linked to fertility and the vital waters as well, as much as with like horses as well. and also connected to the other world. Like, you know, the elves, for instance, in Celtic mythology are also connected to the other world. And there seems to be this like connection there with that. And Rhiannon also being like this water goddess, but also this sovereignty goddess. And Arwen, kind of in Lord of the Rings, plays the same role because, you know, Aragorn needs to marry Arwen, kind of like, it's like there's a connection there between Aragorn and Arwen and the land and the throne, as much as there's this like, yeah, this Celtic like love triangle going on too, or like Arwen and Aragorn, and then Elrond, the father, not wanting Arwen to be with Aragorn. That kind of dynamic that starts to like go more into the water goddess Celtic mythology realm. I think you had something on that, Raine.
Yeah, and just to backtrack a little bit for one final point on that previous topic, the words worm and the phrase to flow are two of the oldest words and phrases we can trace back in human history, like some of the 15 or 20 oldest words that we know. And then that worm is, I think it might be slightly speculative, but there is a lot of link historically and etymologically of kind of changing that worm into serpent. But yeah, so as far as the kind of sovereignty goddess theme goes, the term sovereignty goddess, that's most, from my understanding, it's mostly ascribed to Celtic myths specifically, but it definitely looks a lot like the kind of Hieros Gamos or sacred marriage.
Yeah.
If you kind of take a step back from that. And as the sovereignty goddess is basically where the king gets his power from. And it is very much her choosing. It is like an independently strong woman who makes her own decisions, either from the nobility or from the other world. And with Rhiannon, her name specifically, like part of that name, even though she is from the other world in Celtic, the name has etymological roots to like queen or royalty. You also see this in the Morrigan. So it's kind of part of that R section of the word there. And often either earth or river goddess. And there is like, this kind of love triangle going on. Sometimes the man that her father chooses for her to be married is part of kind of the love triangle, but she says, no, I'm not doing that, and makes her own decisions there. So you can definitely see that with Arwen and Aragorn. And there is the idea of the theme of like a forbidden love. You see that with Arwen being an elf and Aragorn being a human, and the elves and the humans not really getting along for a while. And they will often possess magical abilities. Again, Arwen has the kind of elven magic on her side, and they ask these great tasks of the men that they are seeking. So the men have to prove themselves, and that is kind of a constantly renewing thing. Like if you don't continue proving yourself, then she will leave you for someone else, because she is the personification and protector of the land, and she will do what is in her best interest to preserve that land or her sanctuary. And then, the elves as an elder race to the humans, I believe. I don't know if they were in Lord of the Rings lore, if they're older than humans, but they certainly live longer, and they are more closely in harmony with nature, which does kind of line up with the Tuatha De Danann as kind of being the elder race of Ireland, I believe. Yeah,
that's true. And the Tuatha De Danann also have been linked to the Corios as well, specifically.
Okay. And then with this Rhiannon goddess, she's known for her wealth, generosity, and her political prowess, and specifically in imagery, she is riding a brilliant white horse. And in the stories, she rides faster than anyone in the land, faster than all the men. And we see Arwen riding the white horse, and she says, no, I'll take Frodo because I'm a faster rider than you. and Aragorn swiftly obeys her command. So there's definitely a lot of seems pretty obvious tie-in and influence from the sovereignty goddess, if not Rhiannon specifically, in the character of Arwen.
Yeah, and then also there's this link between Rhiannon and horses, and also their I think the son is also that they had Rhiannon and I forgot his name, Piril, I think it is.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, they have also I think a son together that is also connected to a horse as well. There's like a very strong connection there with horses. Also, in Lord of the Rings, Elrond is very much connected to horses and like elves in general. And
yeah, Rhiannon is supposed to be pretty closely related to Eponia.
Yeah.
Who is, I don't know if it's a god, but it's the protector of horses and possibly fertility goddess. Or a fertility hero if she's not a goddess.
Yeah, she's a goddess, yes. And she's very much connected to that. And from my own digging into it, from what I found out is that there is a connection not only between the other world and like traveling through the water, so the lakes or the rivers, but also a connection to the horse as well. So the goddess, the sovereignty goddess, can ride on the horse from the other world to this world and back, but also through the waters. And sometimes also depicted as riding on the horse through the waters to the other world. And it's kind of like, it's when I was reading that, it very much like immediately made me think of like Sleipnir, like Odin, and like how he also uses that to travel through these different realms. And it kind of made me think then again about Wind-Horse as well, because like the shamans who cultivate it, they cultivate it because the Wind-Horse helps them to travel through these different realms. Because it's like through the cultivation and the awareness that it kind of like allows them. It's like the drum is kind of like symbolized as the mount, the horse that they use. Similarly, they have these horse staffs as well. There's a lot of like that symbolism there. And I think like partly probably like it comes from like the nomadic culture that's very common to like, you know, like where shamanism came from and animism too. And I think like with Proto-Indo-Europeans, there's a lot of that like symbolism as well there. And then Wind-Horse has been by some scholars linked to the kind of like the Proto-Indo-European idea of the chariot or like the horse in general. And there you can see that too with the choreos, like how the horse or this wise old man figure on the horse is leading them through their journey as like this like transformative figure that has already gone through this journey before. And it's
so he's the elder in the Choreos pack then, huh?
Yeah, basically. He's the elder, he's gone through it before, and he's leading them, and it's kind of like this guiding mentor figure that's kind of like connected to this like transcendent force, because they've already gone through it.
Yeah, and if we're just kind of speaking in just broader like Jungian archetypes, you know, Arwen and Aragorn are very much the hero and the huntress.
Yeah.
Which again, through the Pi lens, that would be the Arctea, and the Choreos, which is again the Hyros Gamos, or the sacred marriage between the earth and the sky.
Yeah, and that links also back to the sovereignty goddess as well, because I looked a bit deeper into it, and there seems to be like a general like Proto-Indo-European theme with that going on, with like this idea of the feminine being linked to the land and being linked to the idea of sovereignty, and that sovereignty stems from the feminine and from the vitality that comes from the waters that she controls, and the vitality of nature, and that need of this balance with nature. And with the vitality outside, but also within, and like that, and it makes kind of sense why she's connected to like the queen of the horses in that sense as well, like why the horses are kind of part of part of that, of the sovereignty goddess, and why the water is linked to it as well. because it all like links back to vitality. But then there's also like the snake linked to goddesses as well, in like the wisdom, like healing sense. So there's a lot of that symbolism going on there.
I release you from the spell. You have no power here, Gandalf the Grey. I will draw you, Saruman, as poison is drawn from a wound. Wait. If I go, Théoden dies. You did not kill me. You will not kill him. Rohan is mine. Be gone.
Yeah, so we just watched a scene where Gandalf brought back Théoden from the control of Saruman and kind of the poisoning words of Grima Wormtongue. And yeah, let's dive a little deeper into what occurred in this scene. First of all, yeah, for what stands out for me immediately is kind of like the symbolism of kind of that's inherent in Wind-Horse, and I guess like Gandalf as the wise old man here kind of also plays is this like this transformation of like a more shadow state towards one where the vitality is restored, that you can also see with Théoden, where first he was like under the influence of Grima and Saruman, and then you could see in the scene like his vitality, being restored, going from like an old man, very like a weak, a weak ruler under the influence of the shadow, towards like a ruler that has vitality and ends up doing great things. And I don't know if any of you have anything to further add to that. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I just like that the dude's name is Grima Wormtongue.
Yeah.
And again, we were talking about how worm being linked to snake etymologically.
Yeah.
That's, he's a real snaky character.
Yeah, and Gandalf, I think, even says that to keep his forked tongue between his or within his mouth or something along these lines, I think, in the scene before that as well. That's very much like a snake symbolism as well there again.
You also have, I guess this dips into Arthurian a little bit, and it's not totally realized in Lord of the Rings, but you do have the idea of the sick king,
yeah,
and the land being sick with the king there.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's definitely that symbolism there, I think, too, because there, and then it needs to be restored.
The Fisher King, I think it is.
But go ahead, Lynn.
About kind of like how how he seemed like they're so detached and not very embodied, and then Gandalf comes as the wise old man to guide him back to be more present, and then he can connect again with Erwin and be there, like present with all of them, and to take up his task again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, and I think like what you said, Lynn, that ties also into what you said, Raine, regarding like the link to the land. I think that both of them are kind of tied. It's like the embodiment and kind of this reconnection, I guess, to this sense of vitality is at the same time linked to the kind of this connection to the land as a whole, and like I guess like the well-being of the land. Because at the time where he wasn't like connected to his vitality, the orcs were raiding the villages, and things were not really looking great.
True.
And then
he wasn't, if I remember correctly, he wasn't sending out the riders to go help the villages, and he was kind of kicking the riders out of the castle, of the town square, because of infighting. And he's being that old serpent. He's hoarding power and hoarding the protection for himself and not for his kingdom.
It's also like a victim of coercion and manipulation.
Yeah,
definitely. So I guess it's not all on his shoulders, but that is the effect of it.
Yeah, and then Grima being there, but also like Saruman as kind of this shadow magician as well. That's kind of like in league with Sauron, trying to
and at a distance then influencing.
Yeah, through the Palantir, I think.
And I guess Grima was in league with him.
Yeah. Whispering.
Who'd have thought the guy named Wormtongue would be bad?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think from like a Jungian lens, I guess, with the wise old man, and because the wise old man is kind of a symbol of the self as well, as much as like Wind-Horse is a symbol of the self. So, in that sense, like both kind of play the same role in that sense, where they can play this role of the transformation of like the negative and the shadow kind of, and then integrating that and bringing back the vitality to, because it's through the integration of that's what's in the shadow, and like working through these blocks that we can bring back the sense of vitality. And it's kind of like the I guess again like symbolized by kind of like the serpent, I guess, in a way, because like I think it was Gimli, right, that like pushed Grima down and was like, you better not move, and then Gandalf was the one who helped in the transformation process.
Sounds like Gimli.
Yeah. And
and this is like the first scene of Gandalf being back into the public eye, right? Because Gimli and the rest of that crew there find him in the woods.
True.
But this is like him coming back to out of the forest and out of the deep, dark depths and back into society to bring that light back that he found.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, like with that, there's the idea of the gold in the shadow. There is kind of like the popular misconception that the shadow is all bad things, but it's more like basically repressed things, repressed or forgotten things, and there can be plenty of good things in there too. There is, I think it's kind of like the I don't want to pick on Jordan Peterson too much, but he is kind of known for reigniting the, like the Jungian thought for a lot of people and bringing that into the mainstream.
Yeah.
And his whole bit with the shadow, the collective shadow, is about Hitler, which, if you only take his speeches on it, then you're kind of getting a little bit of a narrow view of what the shadow is all about. And I like to talk about tarot a little bit. The Hermit card, which is one of the most obvious kind of archetypes of the major tarot, obvious and recognizable. You have that hermit he's in the gray robes, right? But he's got a gold staff, and the lantern that he's holding is emitting that gold light. So it is kind of like the gold in the shadow.
I think also, from what I remember, there's some that also connect the light inside of the lantern to the star card, from what I remember.
That would make sense. I mean, she's got the stars behind her and everything. Yeah, I'm not really sure how to articulate that, but that definitely makes sense. And then even like his flowing, the hermit is obviously a man, but he wears the flowing robes, and the flowing robes are very feminine. And the star card is obviously feminine figure. Some people call it more androgynous depending on the deck, but I think it's pretty obviously feminine figure, or at least for modern interpretation, it is a feminine figure.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me now think also about like this connection between because she's standing with one foot on the earth and with one foot in the water. She's pouring the waters. That's again like this vitality, this flow, the waters that it's kind of like starting to make me think about like the water goddesses, but also like the sovereignty goddess now too, like how she kind of,
she's pouring the water on the land would be, bringing back like curing the drought, basically bringing the vitality back to the earth.
Yeah. I very much think so. Kind of like maybe like some of it also with the pouring into the water. Maybe it's also like a connection to the unconscious in that sense. To like
I think so.
And like I guess that she brings back the vitality to that, but also maybe maybe even in a deeper sense, she's like this figure that connects to the unconscious, like like an anima figure maybe, or like much like these water goddesses that can go into the other world in that sense.
Yeah, and then sifting through the collective shadow as the hermit to find the gold. Those kind of represent like old sort of traditions and things that we've lost. Definitely like the Choreos and Arctea stuff that you get into.
Yeah.
Or even, that would be kind of the earth as a whole, but even in like Western society, how like, even bringing in yoga or qigong or breath work or mindfulness meditation and that kind of thing, that is kind of like the gold that we've lost in our shadow too. It's old traditions that we now kind of have access to with the internet and are, gaining momentum a little bit, and we're starting to recognize that these things have value, even if we can't always pin some objective scientific kind of thing to it, even though now we are starting to, thankfully. But there is wisdom in these old traditions that we cast off in the name of science.
Really feel like it really is about like bringing the flow, like the star card keeps the water flowing, and the hermit keeps the light shining, and that's also like how when we do these practices of qigong or something, we get our bodies moving together with our awareness and aligning those together, and creating that movement and momentum to get life moving and the energies moving again, and keep them moving by doing it like, well, hopefully maybe every day, something of the sort, or also like these old traditions of dancing together, and in that way connecting with our body and our instinct too. That's one very powerful way as well.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think like specifically like with some of those ancient traditions, thinking about like how they did that in nature, in the forest, and through that connection in the forest, like how they connected back to that. It's kind of like connecting back to that in the forest through dancing, through kind of like integrating the shadow. Very much, yeah, like how they can bring the light back out from the forest. You know, the forest also kind of symbolizes the unconscious as well, at the same time. So it's like this process of the integration of the shadow that takes place, or like over a longer period of time, where that kind of like liberates people from like a lot of the shadow hold that kind of like the unintegrated instinct would have had, because you're working on actually integrating it. And then with like both the Choreos and Archaea, there's this whole like Heroes Gamma stuff also going on. So that kind of also links again back from the Proto-Indo-European lens to the sovereignty goddess, and again like to this idea of like, you know, with the horses again, and Wind-Horse, and this symbol of transcendence kind of there, like how kind of like in a way it's like when these people are all dancing together, it's kind of like the spirit of Wind-Horse is kind of like dancing in between them. It's kind of like connecting them through their breath, but also their dancing to both each other, but also to the whole, to nature, and kind of like to their bodies as well. And it's kind of like this interconnectedness, because these rituals were also kind of like of building this kind of fellowship within this like group of people. And you know, you can see that very strongly also in Lord of the Rings, where, you know, there is this fellowship, and there's this guiding figure, you know, this hermit figure as Gandalf, leading them further, and like helping them out, and like helping them to face the shadow, and also not to dismiss the shadow either. And I think you, Raine, had something regarding that with like Frodo and Gollum.
Yeah, sure. I'll get into that right after. Just real quick, like, you know, in when you're out in nature with people, you know, like most of us just go camping, you know, or kind of you live a little bit closer out in the hills like I do, but there is much less an idea of like personal ownership, you know, especially when you're out there with a group, especially if you're living out there. And then, you know, let's go back to our ancestors. When you don't have a fridge and you hunt some game, you share that food, because otherwise it's going to spoil. And if you, like, let's think about death. Like, death is a very scary and fearful thing for us as humans. You know, there's a lot of line of thought and kind of the Jungian and evolutionary biology. Like, when we figured out that we die and the people around us die, that changed us. But when you're out in nature and you observe in nature, you see death is very much entwined with birth and rebirth. You know, your meat that you eat comes from animals and not the grocery store. And when a tree falls over, you see it rots, but you see the life that comes out of that too. And I think that is something that, you know, kind of this hermit archetype would teach us in the modern day, because we would kind of get away from the hustle and bustle in the city and, you know, get out into the wilderness for a bit. But yeah, so when they're going through what is it? Gimli's old home. They're going through the mountains, and Gimli is expecting to get a warm welcome, but all the dwarves have been killed.
Yeah.
And Frodo realizes that Gollum has been following them. And of course, Gandalf has known this for a while. And, Frodo starts passing judgment on Gollum because he knows about Gollum because he heard the stories from Bilbo.
Yeah.
And Gandalf kind of scolds him for passing judgment. And, this was kind of a big thing that I connected with watching the series again to prepare for this little talk. And, Gandalf says not to pass judgment too quickly on him, and let's not be too hasty about our decision here. He may still have a part to play in this tale. So Gandalf has the foresight to, instead of, forcing and exerting control, to kind of just let things go as they will and see how it plays out. And of course, later in the series, Gollum is the one that gets them back to Mordor so they can get rid of the ring.
Yeah.
So I guess foresight and, not being too quickly and hasty with our judgments, not being so morally superior. Just a lot of foresight and wisdom in that decision, and what Gandalf was trying to show there.
Yeah. I think maybe some of it is also kind of like, I guess like linked to, I guess the shadow in a way as well, and maybe like, Gandalf as this guiding figure, has this like cultivated awareness due to his experiences, as well, where where he just he I guess he sees beyond just the surface level of Gollum, and sees, I guess, like something more like playing out there.
Gollum's turned into a bit of a shadow creature himself.
Yeah.
He was living in that cave eating fish. I guess that was after he found, because it was the ring that turned him into Gollum. And he's just hanging out in that cave eating raw fish when Bilbo finds him. And then they do the riddles in the dark scene from The Hobbit, and that's how Bilbo gets the ring.
Yeah. And I think also, like, regarding the ring, from what I kind of looked into it, kind of like the ring, in that sense, kind of represents kind of like the antithesis of the concept of Wind-Horse, where it's kind of like it transforms things into like a shadow state. It takes away vitality. I mean, like, think about, like, for instance, like, not just the ring, but also some of those other rings, like with the Nazgul, like it turned them into the ring wraiths, like they're either dead or are really alive.
Yeah,
well.
Boromir wants to use that ring right from the start.
Yeah.
Right when they're in with the elves before the Fellowship has even been formed. He wants to use that ring to fight the army of Sauron, despite knowing the mistakes that they've made in the past. And that is very, shadow-esque of kind of knowing these mistakes in your past and not falling into those same patterns again.
Yeah.
So he gets to be a good foil for Aragorn. And then, of course, Boromir kind of, he wrestles with it a little bit, and he even follows Frodo into the woods towards the end of Fellowship.
Yeah.
And wants to take the ring from him, but and he is immediately filled with shame and regret, and apologizes, and then he kind of redeems himself at the end there, right when he dies, and Aragorn gives him the good death.
Yeah. I don't know if we all have something still to say regarding the scene with Gandalf and Théoden, or if we can head into the next scene with Gandalf arriving at Helm's Deep.
I'm good. Let's keep moving.
Maybe like if I would think about it like from a psychological lens, then I guess it could be like that Gandalf as this figure is like an inner figure that comes to guide us away from the stagnation. Even though it, like in the movie it's like separate figures, but it's like could represent like the inner dynamic.
Kind of in a way.
That's pretty much what I would add, and that's that.
Yeah. So pretty much like the inner, I guess, like a wise old man, or I guess for women, the wise old woman, in that sense. And, in that sense, like mythologically speaking, like, if we take from Jungian psychology, it would then all represent like inner figures in that way. So, you're right there, Lynn.
Théoden King stands alone. Not alone. Rohirrim!
Just saw the scene with Théoden and Aragorn charging against the Uruk-hai and being like all outnumbered within the scene, and then Gandalf and Éomer arriving with Rohirrim in the scene. And really, like, what comes to mind for me is kind of like this scene where, this at Helm's Deep, where it's kind of like this. Well, it's kind of like it feels very hopeless. It's like from the very beginning with the battle, it kind of feels very hopeless. Like even though like the elves arrive in the movie, you have like all these hordes of Uruk-hai coming, kind of like for me like representing like these kind of like this these forces of the collective shadow, or like the collective shadow as a whole, where they're facing it, and then it feels very hopeless. But then Gandalf they're arriving kind of as this beacon of hope and light. And also with the the writers again being involved as well. Kind of like this kind of like larger mass of like I guess like Wind-Horse, or like this kind of like pulled cultivated Wind-Horse coming down the hill to face the collective shadow in a way. That's kind of like how I see it. I don't know if you guys have any like ideas regarding that, like what it brings to mind.
Yeah, this scene almost every time makes me cry. It's somehow so moving that with these people there struggling against all these orcs, all the shadow feels overwhelming. But then the sun is rising and Gandalf brings the light and the reinforcements there. And it just feels like those moments in life when you feel like hopeless, but then there's something that comes and turns it around. And it's something within yourself in a way.
Mm.
I don't know. I think that's why this scene is so powerful, because it reminds of those moments.
Mm. No, that makes all of sense. I guess when facing the shadow, also like very much. I guess when you face it can sometimes feel very hopeless and very dark and very like oh shit. But like I guess like you're right. There's these inner reserves, the inner guidance that's there that can help us through it. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of looking into all this stuff for me, and this shadow and the collective shadow. Obviously, this is working on an individual and collective level, but most of these habits and things, these were ways that we learned to adapt to harsh circumstances. Now, either in the collective, in evolutionary biology, they talk about like the upper Paleolithic, where things got pretty grim. Like these Indo-European people are going all over the Indo-European area, where obviously drought was something that they had to deal with. And then on the individual, just the things that we do to adapt growing up to our families and society, and in the collective as a species, times when we needed to know how to kill and to propagate the species in potentially very unsightly ways to modern society, for good reason, but those things are still in us to some degree. Like those are learned patterns of behavior. And that monster, that beast, that snake isn't gonna go away, but there is like good things in that too, like inner strength and inner wisdom.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes along with not stamping out and not killing those instincts. You can't just ignore them, or you can't just try and squash them out. They need to be kind of exercised in certain ways to be able to kind of sift that gold out of it. So you have to acknowledge that reality. Otherwise, that kind of archetypal and instinctual energy gets projected onto other people if you don't acknowledge and deal with it in yourself. And then you turn into, Don Quixote chasing windmills. And the message of Christ, do unto others as you would have done unto you, that gets twisted and pushed out externally. And it goes into, do unto others what has been done unto you. And that's, what we're trying to get over here. And, acknowledging that and integrating that and dealing with that is, I think, what opens up the empathy for one, and the ability to kind of open up these higher relating functions, which I think would kind of be what Jung was talking about, like with the anima and the animus.
Yeah. No, I do think so. And I do think also in a way that like the anima and the animus is kind of like something that I guess the higher relating functions in that way kind of becomes available to us more when we face the shadow, when we integrate our instinctual side, so we can like better I guess like I guess it comes down to like getting like through these blockages within the flow within ourselves, both like emotional but also instinctual, so these can flow better.
Yeah, it opens up new ways of relating to other people and new ways of seeing the world. You know, like this garden that we live in, we would be able to better behold it and accept the blood on our hands rather than creating more of these endless cycles of trauma. It always reminds me of the Ram Dass quotes. I can do nothing for you but work on myself. You can do nothing for me but work on yourself.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like that ties into the scene as well here with like this collective pooling of the riders, or like if you tie it into Wind-Horse, like the collective kind of like doing that, and they kind of like in that sense symbolically could be seen as like, you know, like a collective that has cultivated that in their own journeys, embodying that like kind of like transformation within themselves. And I kind of, that's kind of what comes to mind.
And they're all stuck in Helm's Deep, fighting this giant horde of never-ending orcs. And then, you know, what comes in to save the day at the final moment there is Gandalf with this brilliant, bright light, this illumination that allows them to, you know, see this battle in a new way that they can actually win.
Yeah. And I also kind of like at the end when the Urukai like run away, it's the trees that then pick them off as well.
That might be in the extended version, maybe?
Yeah, it is in the extended version. Yeah.
Each of those movies is like 4 hours long in the extended version.
I know, it's so long. It is. But it's good.
So weren't those trees were created with elf magic, weren't they?
I think so.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think they were singing or to them, I think it was, or speaking to them, and then they started to be able to speak and move, and yeah, I think it was something along those lines.
Those elves have gone past the realm of shadow projection, and I think that's what they're doing with some anima and animus, is doing some cool shit with nature.
I think so. They have like a deep connection to nature too, and I think they were created, if I'm not mistaken, before, because they were there a long time, the elves. Maybe before humans even. But I'm not 100% sure on that one. But yeah, they definitely are very ancient, for sure, and have like a deep connection to nature. And kind of like maybe in that way they symbolize like the ones that are like deeply connected to like instinct in a way too, and like have these like higher realms of relating like open to them or something along these lines.
I bet like that the connection to nature is what allows them to live so long.
Probably. And it kind of makes sense too, like if you think about it, like Sauron and this like industrial kind of stuff that he does, like the industrial machine of Sauron and Saruman and stuff, like how they're
and he's going around chopping down all the trees, and then he pisses off those ants too, and then they are quite a bit stronger and larger and bigger than the humans and the elves that he pisses off, and that kind of ends up being part of his downfall too.
Yeah, very much so. Where they unleash the water from the dam, and then they
yeah, that happens too.
Let it flow.
You fuck with nature, it's gonna fuck with you back.
Oh yeah. But yeah.
A backlash.
Yeah. But then there's also like, you know, this moment, this powerful moment at Helm's Deep too, like with Shadowfax, you know, like Gandalf being there and Shadowfax being there too as like the prince of the Meras as well. You know, like the prince of the horses. That makes me like a lot think about Rhiannon again and like her connection to horses and like the son that she has that is like kind of like can be seen as a prince, also very much connected to horses. Yeah, I think there's a lot of like intertwined symbolism there.
Yeah, a lot of the time that's what how it seems like. A lot of symbolism is related and similar.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, and research. I never read Lord of the Rings. I read The Hobbit when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wouldn't mind reading that one again because it's, you know, not a massive trilogy. But in kind of researching Tolkien and his stance and what, you know, the influences that he openly admitted went into Lord of the Rings, this techno-industrial society that he witnessed was very much what he was writing about with Sauron and the army of the orcs and everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going around and just, you know, toppling the trees and building these big mines, and all the orcs are these, you know, twisted creatures, and all the forces of darkness that he rallies, all the forces of chaos and mercenaries and you know, sort of chaotic barbarian tribes and everything. And all that only ends with you know, all those people just want power. That is essentially what they seek, and you can't have real allies when all you want is power, because it'll all just be cutthroat and backstabbing. Gandalf stands up to all that. Is it I always get Sauron and Saruman confused. I know they're like, one gets their power from the other, but whoever the old white wizard is, you know, he says to Gandalf, like, there's no way we can win this, so let's just join the forces of the powers of darkness right now, you know, and get our spot in this next world. Gandalf says no.
Yeah, that's Saruman, the one that tried to like manipulate and like shadowy influence Théoden as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, the wizard that was turned from white to corrupted.
Yeah.
By Sauron. Through the connection through the Palantirs, I think.
Yeah, he's fucking around with that Palantir too much.
Yeah. Too much pondering the orb.
Yeah, too much orb pondering indeed. I guess that's kind of like I guess like the difference between Saruman and Gandalf. Saruman is there up in his tower, always pondering his orb. Well, Gandalf is there running around, galloping on Shadowfax later, and like, I don't know, he's always on the ground, always interacting.
He's smoking that hobbit herb.
Yeah.
That Saruman scolds him for. While he's sitting there pondering his orb. When you ponder the orb ponders back at you.
I guess that's maybe true. He looked too deep into the abyss with that orb.
And
yeah, it's like symbolic of the like being detached in a way, or like in the tower with the orb instead of being on the ground with everyone else.
Yeah.
Aren't the Palantirs, aren't those kind of directly connected to Sauron?
Well, Sauron doesn't he have some of them? I think he found.
Yeah.
Gandalf says we don't know who else is looking back into those because they haven't all been recovered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another thing that I also thought was interesting. I was listening to the interview from one of Tolkien's sons.
Yeah.
So obviously he was very well informed about what Tolkien was trying to convey and what he was trying to do. And he said that Gandalf would be worse with the ring than Saruman because Gandalf is righteous. And you can see, I think Gandalf understands that too, because he knows not to touch it and not to fuck around with it too much. And that's why he has, Frodo hold and handle it, at least till they get it to the elves, and then Frodo makes his own decision. But, I think Gandalf acknowledges that and knows that and stops himself from handling it himself, probably because of all the grounding that he does, hanging out in nature and hanging out with the hobbits and hanging out with dwarves and going on adventures and shit.
Yeah.
So that way he can be righteous and he can be the good guy, but he also knows his limitations. He understands his own shadow. He understands the shadow of the humans, and yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't let it take over.
Yeah.
He knows to not weasel too deep.
Basically, I would say so.
Go back to the abyss! Fall into the nothingness that awaits you and your master.
Do you not know death when you see it, old man? This is my power. You have failed. The world of men will fall.
Courage, Mary. Courage for our friends.
We just saw the scene where Gandalf was facing the Witch King, and finally then the Rohirrim arrived at the Battle of Minas Tirith. And there's some similar symbolism there as in the scene at Helm's Deep, kind of this moment of the Rohirrim arriving, but this time it's Théoden and this larger horde of riders arriving, where Gandalf is facing the Witch King, and again things seem kind of hopeless, but then things are turning around. And for me, I don't know, at least it personally underscores kind of how, Gandalf even, he's facing the Witch King, and and it seems like he's winning, but then there's kind of this collective effort going on there, where there's all these other, kind of symbolically, these other people that have cultivated their Wind-Horse and integrated their instinctual side that are riding there together as a symbol of like, you know, freedom and liberation and transformation, that are like facing this like a massive horde of orcs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like an image of solidarity that they arrive to help out. And it saves Gandalf too, probably, and he can keep helping everyone.
Yeah.
Because the others are bringing their vitality to help as well.
Yeah, and I guess in some sense one can say they're bringing their own self, because I mean, if one thinks deeper about like Wind-Horse, it's like it's a symbol of the self. So, you know, it's also linked to like not just the vitality, you know, and the, that like streams upward, but in a way it's like also connected to, you know, our own authenticity, our own vital energy that we can then use for something constructive, instead of like, you know, going into these negative shadow tendencies. So it's kind of like, I don't know, for me it's like symbolizing that, like this solidarity between all of these people that have cultivated this, and together they're facing it, instead of like because alone one can't face it.
Yeah, because we are interconnected, so we need each other to be working on ourselves.
Yeah, I think so. That kind of makes me think about, like, in a more, I guess, literal, like practical sense, I guess, about like emotional support, and like to have these spaces where people can support each other in this kind of like endeavor of like cultivating, I guess, Wind-Horse, or like integrating their instinctual side, and this process of, I guess, personal growth, really what it is.
And really like places where you can bring your truth, like how you're really feeling, and what are your real thoughts, and to share that, and not to be judged for it, but to instead be like curious about what it means, and what's the message of these emotions, and maybe they're even from the past too, partly, or yeah. But that really good that you brought up that about the authenticity, because I think that's very much like part of the Wind-Horse thing.
I think so too. It's like self-awareness, vitality, but I think authenticity is also. It's like, you know, like
Truth.
Yeah, truth. Like Gandalf is like standing there facing the Witch King, which, you know, most people fear. He's standing there in his power, and he faces him, and it basically tells him to go back to the void, to, you know, where he came from. And yeah, I think that's just part of it. And I think, like, in that sense, like, it's like when we stand there together in our shared authenticity, that we stand stronger in that sense than facing it alone. I think that and what you said, Lynn, also with judgment, made me think again about what we earlier talked about regarding what Gandalf scolded Frodo for in the Fellowship, regarding not judging Gollum, to not be too harsh with the judgment. I kind of feel like it applies to ourselves too, like our own shadow and what comes up.
Yeah, because it's like it's oftentimes it's from childhood when we had to adapt in some way, and maybe it didn't like it's not helping us anymore how we adapted to the situation, but to have like this compassion that, well, we needed to do that at the time, and now we can work on changing it for something different kind of behavior and patterns.
Yeah. No, I think very much so. And I think like in a grander scheme, because again, like there's this like collective shadow kind of like theme there, but I kind of like feel like it also highlights like, yeah, the interconnectedness of like the individual journey with like the broader whole, and like how more people kind of like integrate this and work on these things, like, you know, what you also were saying, Raine, with the Ramdown quote, that like, yeah, that we that can help in the transformation of kind of like the shadow state, or like, you know, I guess all these urukai being like transformed into something much better, and in that way like overcome.
Guess the next scene is Gandalf and the Balrog, but for this scene, you know, it's later in the series, so he already did the Balrog thing.
Yeah.
He already went kind of internally to deal with his own demons, basically. And so this fight is all out in the open, and he kind of faces that collective shadow of the Witch King. He can't really fight it by himself, but, you know, everything's all out in the open, and just kind of, I guess, being authentic, kind of, you know, you live to fight another day. You can put it off until you have stronger forces and better allies. But yeah, as far as like authenticity goes, it is kind of putting it all out in the open. There are like pretty horrible and bad things and suffering in the world that we accept without thinking twice about it, just because we've gotten used to it. And there's, you know, some good things that have gotten lost in that shadow and that we condemn, but we're not really supposed to say it culturally, or because it's a taboo or something. So
yeah,
it's about kind of building up that authenticity with people and being honest from a real human perspective, and not just siding with culture and society, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you want to go into the last scene next. If there's anything more to that either of you feel like to bring up. For me, it's
actually, all right. I can do one more thing, but were you going to say something?
No, for me, I don't have anything more to say.
All right, yeah, I think this this little note here I have would fit with this scene rather than the last one. So in the tarot, the final major arcana is the world.
Yeah.
And basically in Jungian, this is kind of like the self, or the collective self, like the cosmic man, basically. And in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, kind of like the most popular one, there is basically like this egg-shaped ribbon around this anthropomorphic, or androgynous figure. And this egg-shaped ribbon is like, the way that it's portrayed, it kind of looks like it has scales almost. So it's very much supposed to remind you of the Ouroboros. It's supposed to remind you of the serpent eating itself, but it's more like a wreath this time.
Yeah.
So instead of having obvious scales, it almost looks like it has like this interwoven pattern, almost looks like feathered plumes. If I want to be a little liberal with the symbolism and kind of apply our own vernacular at the Foxton to it, it is kind of like pushing through that snake, that two-dimensional image of a serpent eating itself. It is flat, it is circular, and there's no way out of it. So it is kind of pushing past the fight or flight of that part of the serpent or lizard brain, and getting through to that rest and repair mode about healing.
Yeah.
And then getting, or from a collective, you know, getting past the bad ways that we adapted and getting to that wisdom, sifting through to that gold, and maybe even, you know, open up for basically creation itself as since it is shaped more like an egg than the serpent. So taking that 2D snake that we all have within us and making it pop with new dimensions, making that egg crack open.
Yeah, how the instinctual force can be so destructive when it's unintegrated and pushed into the shadow. We disown it, but then when we work together with it in a wise way, then it becomes like really the transformative force. And I think that's cool. Like the egg shape in the card,
makes me kind of think about like the egg in a way also, like this kind of like androgynous figure. It's almost like it's the birthing of the self in a way. And it's doesn't wear any clothes either, from what I remember, if I'm right about that.
Yeah.
So it's also kind of like very
like a
authentic,
rebirth.
like a rebirth. Yeah, very much so.
And it's kind of, I guess it's supposed to be androgynous, but it looks pretty female to me usually. But
yeah,
I guess it's supposed to be androgynous, and then it's also kind of in a pose that looks like she's dancing. So you get some of that, like the dance of the Rasa Leela kind of vibes with it too. So
yeah.
To keep moving, keep flowing.
Yeah. I think so very much. And in a way, kind of like it ties maybe also like symbolically a tiny bit with the star card too. It's like kind of the flowing of the waters, but I kind of like
definitely
the flowing of I guess the waters inside, the vitality within, but also like it bursting forth from the egg.
In the lover's card, it's the male and female as two separate people, right? And they're in the garden, and there's the angel above them, and then you start getting these androgynous characters later on through, like you have like the hermit, who's obviously male, but he's wearing feminine flowing robes, and there's kind of like I think Justice is sometimes like a woman, but she's got a sword, like a phallic symbol, but then it keeps turning into this more and more androgynous figure where it's the united masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
With the star card and then finally the world card.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you want to now go into the last one.
I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Arnor. The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun! Go back to the shadow! You shall not pass! Dungeon to the highest peak, I fought him, the Balrog of Morgoth.
In this last scene, we saw Gandalf fighting the Balrog of Morgoth. And this actually is one that takes us all the way back to the Fellowship of the Ring, actually. Where, he faces, the Balrog. And I want to, with that, take it away and let you guys chime in with what comes to mind regarding this scene.
Yeah, sure. I'll get it started here. Because since we just talked about another tarot card, I can I'll bring it back to the Hermit card. I talked about it a little bit earlier, kind of in the imagery, because he's got the golden rod and the golden lamp. He's finding, sifting through the shadow to find the gold. I'd say this scene is more representative of the individual shadow, maybe of Gandalf or something, if you want to get real technical about it. But I think there's probably plenty of both individual and collective symbolism going on here.
Yeah.
And as far as just like kind of what we can learn from the Hermit in our day and age is just withdrawing from all the noise and wasted energy and finger pointing and media narratives and just kind of obvious and blatant sickness in society. We may have our differences on the causes and roots of these things, but ultimately we all want the same thing, the same goals, safety and having some of our basic human needs met. And it is about kind of withdrawing and uninvesting yourself from these polarities and to go back inward and discover, figure out the things that you really believe, your actual thoughts and opinions and beliefs. And especially in our day and age with technology and distractions and access to, whatever you want, really. It's not going to be quiet when you first withdraw and then go inward. There's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of clutter, a lot of stuff that you probably haven't dealt with before you even get back to talking to that collective snake, talking snakes. So you got to clear out the dust and demons in there and carve out a quiet place. And it takes some work, but it's definitely worth it. But then even that, we see Gandalf come back. Man is no single archetype. You're not supposed to identify with a single archetype. That's how you get, 10 Joker movies in 10 years. And you got to come back and help people and steer mankind back and help steer mankind back in a better direction. Obviously, one person can only do so much, but if you help one or two people and those one or two people help one or two people, then the network grows.
Exactly. And I guess in that way, it's kind of like about facing the inner Balrog within, and to kind of like tap into I guess like this kind of like heroic inner figure within as well, to face it, to like the Hermit, go inward to find the wise old man or wise old woman within oneself. It kind of makes me think also about like how there's like externally like people searching for wise old women's or wise old man to guide them to kind of be like these father or mother figures, but in a way I kind of feel like it's more about like finding that within oneself, to find one's own truth.
There's the projection thing again too. So you gotta find this archetype within yourself, otherwise you project that need externally, and then you get gurus and you get taken advantage of, and and it's also wisdom that is inward and from the Hermit, from wise old man. We live in the age of knowledge and science and information. We have been illuminated by all that. And obviously we don't know 100% what happened in the past because, we can only we only have our scientific tools to kind of piece things together. But there is wisdom in all those traditions, and in kind of like a Jungian sense. So there is wisdom wrapped up in these archetypes that are within yourself too.
Yeah.
I feel like the archetype of the wise one, the wise old man, wise old woman, that links to us to the self. It's like, it's kind of out from outside of time. It's at the same time it's young and old, and if we connect with that, then we connect with everything, with all the knowledge and the truth. So that's real. That's a real deep task, and I guess continual one. Never graduate. Really, you gotta keep connecting. And something else that I was thinking about, but now I forgot.
I don't know. Maybe we'll get back to you.
Yeah, and it definitely is wise old woman too. And it's not just wise old man. That's just kind of the the go-to phrase. And if you kind of look at the language surrounding that, it's the wise old woman is the crone. Maybe that word didn't have a bad association when these kind of concepts were getting off the ground and their mythologies are being created around it. But now it definitely does, I feel like. And that, has to do with some demonization and losing touch with the feminine and everything. And it also shows kind of how words get warped over time.
Yeah.
Like with etymology, which has very much come about because of science and the age of information and logic. We are able to go back in time a little bit with some degree of speculation, of course, and look at where these words came from and the roots, and kind of what it also gives us a better idea of how this kind of psychotechnology called language works and how it bends and fluctuates with time. And, that in itself is bringing wisdom and knowledge together, bridging the gap and bringing those back together too.
True.
Not relying on one or the other and using both, which is what we need to do. You can't just get rid of logic and all the scientific advancements. We want to keep a lot of those. But we want the wisdom with it too. And there's a reason we went away from pure wisdom and went into these knowledge things. We wanted to make the earth more habitable, and it was supposed to decrease suffering, which it has actually. I think most metrics say that suffering is in general decreasing over time on a long enough kind of span. Although I'm sure that has rises and dips, but yeah, it's bringing those two things together.
Yeah, and to bring it into the context of the environment too. Like, I don't think I think there's been a lot more destruction of ecosystems to create that.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
But I believe we could do it in a different way where that wouldn't happen, and we would still be able to have our what is it called? Living standard. To do it in a different way.
Yeah.
If we would go inward and do the hermit thing for a while and figure out what really matters to us, we can get rid of a lot of this stupid junk that we don't need.
Yeah.
That makes us unhappier because we can't think for more than 3 seconds ahead. of time, because we're so distracted by technology and random buzzing lights and shit. That's we could focus on what is really important, which would reduce the impacts of us on the environment. And again, even that has become controversial and politicized, which again goes back to the hermit of pulling away from these narratives and pulling away from kind of a lot of relying on top-down power structures that can certainly do good, but they get out of whack real easy, especially in these giant nations where you're supposed to represent all these different groups and geography and terrain, when they could much easier, much better govern themselves in smaller groups. That's
Yeah.
So in a way, like when the hermit or the wise old man takes that time to discern and to feel or like to feel and think, to find his own inner wisdom. A lot of the time, we can see it in Gandalf too. It's like he decides to bring it back and to help help the collective with it, what he has realized, and with all he can, really, to be there helping everyone. So I think that's like very part of that archetype. The compassion to help others.
I think so. Yeah. Oh, I just had the thought comment, like from an astrological lens, doesn't the hermit link to Virgo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just had that
Lynn's got the astrology knowledge.
Somewhat. Learning more currently.
Yeah, more than I do.
But yeah, now this made me think about that.
Yeah, so then that shows you, like, even though the tarot card is like a masculine figure, but then like that's connected to the sign of Virgo, which is earth and feminine. So
yeah,
it's like very much grounded into the real world. And looking at how things actually, what's working, what's not working, and discerning then like what to do.
Maybe like I think he said one time isn't it linked to Mercury? So isn't it like almost like grounded wisdom, like kind of what Gandalf brings, because he's pretty like grounded.
So with Mercury, it rules two signs. So it rules Gemini and Virgo. So yeah, that's like the where the in a way the air and the earth come together in Virgo. So that's one of those symbols.
Yeah. It's like these like with Wind-Horse too, like it brings these opposites together in a way. So it brings that like the heavenly and the earthly together, because that combines both, and through that, through the combining of both, it can transcend them at the same time.
What do you mean transcend?
Well, I guess it can go beyond the limitations of just one realm, because it connects them. It can freely move around both.
It becomes more than
its parts.
One or the other.
Yeah. That's the idea of that,
Yeah, and it represents not only the heavenly and earthly or like that, but also like mental and body and coming together as well.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of opposites coming together in that, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I guess Hermes had his hermit stage doing alchemy after he built the pyramids from Atlantis. It was a joke. Never mind.
Yeah. I don't know, like, I guess one thing that also came to mind for me is is, I guess, instead of the Balrog, I don't know. There's this. I was walking outside a while ago, and I saw this like movie poster. I think it was Transformers and like something about beasts or something. They made they merged like King Kong with like machines or something, and made me immediately think about like the collective, like the collective shadow and like unintegrated instinct and stuff like that. And it kind of made me think of like, I guess in a way, like these techno beasts are current like Balrogs, or in a way, maybe.
Yeah, I got older brothers that were into comic books, so I think I remember learning a bit about Transformers. It's a pretty trippy lore, but yeah, there's like a whole group of them that are robot animals, so they're not all just cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess there's, in that sense, like a lot of representations like that in the culture of this, like, where like I guess like the serpent and the beast and these things kind of get merged or projected onto the technology in a way. And it kind of reminds me also about what you, Raine, what you had posted about Arbrasax and this link to like technology and this distraction.
Was that what Jung was talking about?
I think so, yes.
Let's see. I kind of forgot about that. And when I read it, I was kind of focused on the egg and the Phanes part.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Oh yeah, so Jung directly equated Abraxas to the political ideologies of our time, and it is the web of modern technology that holds us captive in it further, because it offers all sorts of comforts and distractions, but at the same time dominates us and basically takes away our free will, sort of metaphorically speaking, and then like with the hermit thing, if you're projecting that outwardly onto gurus, that is also giving up your free will, because you're just following in other people's paths and doing what they tell you to. Even Jung said, I am glad that I am Jung and not a Jungian. He was saying, you can't just do the things that I do. You can't just do the steps that I do. It is a very personal journey. We can share our journeys to help each other along the way, but it is going to be completely unique for every person. And about sort of this fake god of our age that he likened to Abraxas, he says to worship him is death, to fear him is wisdom, not to resist him means liberation. So again, like, you have to acknowledge that it's there. It is our way of life. We kind of have to. You have to live it to a certain degree, but you don't have to be defined by it. And at the time, a few months before his death, this probably would have been around the time that he was writing his Part of Man and his Symbols too.
Yeah, probably.
Says, I was unable to make the people see what I am after. I am practically alone. There are few who understand this and that. There are a few who understand this and that, but almost nobody sees the whole. I have failed in my foremost task to open people's eyes to the fact that man has a soul and there is buried treasure in the field, and that our religion and philosophy are in a lamentable state.
Oh.
But his Red Book and Liber Novus and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He didn't want that released when he was alive. because he was already under, plenty of scrutiny, breaking off from the Freudian tree and all of that.
Yep.
So he didn't want that released in his lifetime. But I think it was his daughter, or whoever runs, the foundation in his name, decided that I might as well put this stuff out there. There seems to be, a little bit more going on, people a little bit more interested in these concepts, a little bit more open to things, outside the rigid Western tradition, and things are starting to loosen up a little bit. But with loosening things up comes the mistakes of sifting through that shadow. Well, I guess Jung thought that the Red Book and that kind of thing would help people avoid some of those mistakes. Yeah, like McKenna's archaic revival, give birth to the ancient in a new time. It's the way Jung put it, and that's not just turning our heads backwards and trying to pull back time. You can't do that. You can't just go backwards. We have to take all the things that we've learned and acknowledge and admit to our mistakes and try and deal with those things. You can't just snap our fingers and make nuclear missiles go away.
But I guess it's kind of in a way, learning from the past and bringing the ancient traditions and this wisdom that comes with it back to the now. But I guess also our internal wisdom, the wise old man, the wise old woman within, that resides there, to bring that wisdom back to the world.
Yeah, I mean, he made a very interesting mandala.
Yeah.
In the Black Book, and first he allowed it to be released, but he didn't even put his name on it. He didn't want his name to be associated with it. But later he claimed it as his own, and he describes the seventh sermon, the solitary star in heavens, and he said, "You have in you the one God, the wonderfully beautiful and the kind, the solitary, star-like, unmoving. He who is older and wiser than the Father, he who has a saved hand, who leads you among all the darknesses and death scares of dreadful Abraxas. He gives joy and peace, since he is beyond death and beyond what is subject to change. He is no servant and no friend of Abraxas."
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It is. Yeah, and I know that particular mandana, but yeah, he made another version of it as well, a one that's more detailed as well.
Yeah,
that one he was more private about, and then he made the one that he published, not under his name, which was less detailed because he omitted some stuff.
Yeah, maybe more collective.
Yeah, more collective.
And instead of the individual one that he kind of was more for him.
Yeah, and I've looked at both of them, and it's very interesting what he put together there, for sure. But I think he's right regarding that. We're kind of all on our own journeys, even though we can collectively, I guess, pull our inner wisdom and authenticity into the whole. We're still kind of bringing, things individually. We're going back to what I said regarding the Battle of Minas Tirith, where we're kind of still like a singular rider in the horde of riders in a way that bring change. But each rider kind of had gone through their own inner struggle. They had to face their own shadow first before they could together take on the collective shadow or to do anything more. And I kind of feel
it's the Knights of the Round Table going away from the table.
Yeah.
going off into the forest and doing their own adventures and doing their own thing, and leading their own lands and their own people, and then they come back to the table to share all the knowledge that they've learned and help make the better kingdom. But they each have their own inner journey, their own personal plot of land that they're supposed to take care of and learn from, and each time they come back around and bring it together, and the kingdom gets a little better.
Yeah.
So it is inward, but you also come back to the outward with it.
Yeah, very much so, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like the flow between the both of those, like the inner and the outer.
Yeah.
To not get lost in the just the outer social society, but like also not to just isolate and be just alone hermiting forever. It's like something like a reverberation between both.
Yeah, I don't know. It makes me not think about Saruman. He pondered this orb too long.
We've got a lot of orbs these days with the TV and the computer, and we have some way figured out how to be like supremely individualistic while also being social. Like with our computers and social media, like you get on Twitter, no one's actually talking to each other. They're just yelling into the void in a big mass, So that's kind of what a lot of social media is. And again, like that kind of bleeds into the echo chambers a little bit too.
Yeah.
It's all warped and weird in the West. So there is certainly good things about individuality, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But when you get too individual, then you don't care about the maintenance and structure of society, and you're just out for yourself.
I guess it's about remembering that we rely on the environment, the ecosystems, but also on the social order, I would say. Because we need some sort of ordered existence for this to work, but the way it's been done, it's maybe not the best way in all.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the world, you see some of those very these societies built on the collective mindset too, that are a little too rigid and all of that, and that certainly has plenty of downfall too. So, and it is weird how the world cracked and split in two like that, and obviously there's shades of gray in the middle and everything. But that was another thing that kind of Jung was talking about, especially in the UFO book, was this collective unconscious being kind of like a uniting principle. Like we already went across the world and we already inhabited every part of the world. Like we can't go any farther on the globe and start new societies and cultures. There's no more land left. The only way to do that is to go into space. But so now it's not like man versus nature. It's man versus man and man versus himself. And it is coming back together. Or trying to, at least.
Yeah, and I guess in a way, like with the individual and the collective, I guess it's also kind of, because I think in Man and His Symbols he talked about this like divide back then with the Iron Curtain, like how there was this divide kind of going on, and in a way, I guess like he was talking about like this need of bringing these two like seemingly opposing things together into like a whole. I guess in a way that's the same for us here, to find like a balance between our individuality but also the collective, or like the more communal bond that we can have with others, that I kind of feel like really would help out a lot of people.
Yeah, because we are social animals after all.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if regarding like Lord of the Rings in general now, like there's anything that you guys will still want to add, or anything else that's on your minds regarding all of this, just generally speaking.
I still love that first movie. The other two are good, but I think like Two Towers especially has so much battle scenes that, you know, I can do a few battle scenes, but it starts to be a little much after a while. But I mean, other people loved it, so
Yeah.
it got through. It did what it was supposed to do. Let's hope they don't try and remake it.
Well, yeah.
For sure, it's like a epic story.
Oh yeah.
Has a lot of like meaningful symbolism in it.
I think so.
It's like very cool that Tolkien put it together story, and then they filmatized it in this
Yeah,
very,
especially
very
after like
thought out way.
Yeah.
like after getting into Jung and I guess just growing up a little bit, you know, I think we had this idea of Tolkien, especially before the movies came out, that he was just, you know, a nerd.
Yeah.
Because like Dungeons and Dragons pretty much lifted all their stuff from Tolkien, but it kind of got turned into a flat kind of story almost, from what I know about Dungeons and Dragons, which isn't much, you know. They could be deeper than I'm giving it credit for. And then, you know, Dungeons and Dragons lore kind of turned into a lot of the video game stuff. So it was kind of like, I guess, bled through to modern culture kind of 2 or 3 degrees away of separation from really what mythology and kind of what Jung is talking about. So I think the movie kind of helped reignite that he was talking about some real, you know, deeper personal forces and kind of the mythological thinking and trying to keep that alive and bring that back. And he saw what was on the horizon with technology and the rise of technology and logic. And I think he lived through the First World War, I believe. So, yeah.
Yeah.
He saw the writing on the wall.
I think so, and he also had, I think it is in one of his, maybe it was in one of his letters, or that Tolkien had written, if I recall correctly, that during the war, I think it was World War II, that he kind of felt like, in a way, like what later became for him orcs, kind of like how they were kind of sent there, like to just butcher each other in that way. And it didn't feel like they were really fighting over anything. They were just, And I think like Tolkien in that way was really, through that story, wrestling with a lot, in like a personal but also collective sense.
Yeah, Jung talks about. Oh, go ahead and finish your thought.
No, go ahead, Mary.
I think just from what I've gathered and, you know, like a few quotes here and there, it seems like, you know, Jung kind of identifies these wars, you know, that it is kind of peak madness, like, because with civilized society, we have given so much of our instinctual nature. You look back even in like Mesopotamia and these myths where, you know, they certainly, you know, nature was on their doorstep still, and they were still doing these rites and rituals to connect with their animal side, right?
Yeah.
So you can imagine how far off we've become. And I would imagine the genome catches up eventually, but with how fast technology progresses, it gets ahead of us real quick, and it has gotten ahead of us. And you see these wars as, you know, these collective entities that we call countries and ideologies and forces, that they see themselves as separate from all the other ones, and builds up this instinctual tension, and builds up this shadow character that needs to be dealt with, and it's not being dealt with, and gets projected onto other countries, and it just turns into these giant clashes that might have been skirmishes over land or resources in the past, and now it's turned into sort of the most monstrous things that anyone could ever think mankind would be capable of, if not more.
But what's the
Real
point?
uplifting message.
I was just thinking that, but go ahead, Lynn.
Sorry, Lynn.
No, I just asked what was the point of your
I guess just
thing.
just describing how Jung saw these wars, and
Okay.
how he saw it as a transfer of instinctual energy that used to be handled very differently, and they used to kind of keep it in check by having these rites and rituals and living with nature, being more naturalistic, and not seeing themselves as above nature and something different than nature, which is kind of what modern civilization is about, I guess.
But I guess in that sense, to bring it back to the light.
No,
What no?
it's not what it's about, Raine. It's that's the part that is collapsing, and it can't stay because it's not aligned to the way, so it's falling away.
I should hope so.
I'm sorry for Jung that he felt so alone and that no one was understanding him, but I feel like we maybe are kind of getting the gist of what he was speaking about, and more people, I feel, are getting there. And I feel like there's like a momentum for change right now.
Yeah, I
That's
think
how I
that's
see
why
it.
I think that's why his daughter or whoever runs the foundation said, okay, let's release these books that he didn't want to in his lifetime, and yeah, I think I hope that it is, and yeah, I think it is gaining traction a bit.
No, I think so. I think like what I wanted to bring up is just that I do think there is something going on. It's like what Nairm said. He similarly is seeing like that there is this like kind of like archaic revival, and like this kind of like going on. It's like people reconnecting with themselves, with more with their instincts and nature, and wanting to do things differently. And there's like this shift away from that. And I do think that there is this shift occurring. It's just a question of, I guess, like people coming together and supporting each other on these like journeys, and to very much like transform that. So all this instinctual energy gets pulled away from the collective shadow, from the darkness and this war stuff, and that can like be integrated, and we can reconnect with nature, reconnect like with ourselves in that way too, like to become more embodied again. And I think Wind-Horse and that kind of idea is key in that bringing the soul back down. And I think that's kind of like the transformative wave right there. That's the Wind-Horse wave.
Yeah, pulling away from the media narratives and the ideologies, and just being human again, being authentic again.
Yeah.
As a grassroots kind of movement.
Yeah. I very much think so. Yeah. I don't know if yeah. Do you still have something to say, Lynn?
No.
No?
Okay. I'm good.
You're good. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, if I don't know if any of you have still anything to say, or if we should end this episode here.
I think that's about it for me.
Same for me.
Mm.
Yeah. Yes, with that all said, I would wanna thank you Lynn and you Raine and everyone who has been on here listening during the roundtable recording, for having been here and for bringing, for everyone bringing their wisdom and knowledge and insights. And I would say for anyone listening, if you want to join any next talk or have any suggestions, just leave it in the either in the comments or just join the Fox Den. And regarding that, there's also a support circle now. It's gonna probably stay small, or should be kept small, because to really be able to really support one's authenticity. But I, with that, really encourage also people to kind of build that for themselves, to build these networks of individuals where they can work together and work on the shadow and towards their authenticity.
Good luck, guys.
Yeah. Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.